The lights in the research facility flickered as another energy surge hit the sensors. Dr. James Walker looked up from his computer screen, his coffee cup trembling slightly on the desk. This was the fifth surge today, and each one was stronger than the last. The facility, hidden deep in the Norwegian mountains, had never recorded anything like this before. "Sir, you need to see this." Tom, one of the younger researchers, called from his station. His face looked pale in the blue glow of the monitors. "The energy readings, they don't make any sense." James walked over, his worn boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. The graph on Tom's screen showed impossible patterns, energy that seemed to appear from nowhere and disappear into nothing. It broke every law of physics they knew. "Call the military liaison," James ordered, running his hand through his graying hair, "and get me a direct feed from the mountain sensors." The facility burst into action. Within minutes, the main screen lit up with live footage from their mountaintop cameras. The snow-covered peaks looked normal at first, but then the air began to shimmer. It started as a small dot of light, no bigger than a coin, but it grew quickly. James grabbed his tablet and started recording data. The energy signatures matched some of his theoretical work. Patterns he had once joked looked more like magic than science. But this was real, and it was happening right in front of them. The military arrived just as the light expanded into a full circle, 30 feet across. Captain Miller took one look at the readings and ordered his men into position. Their plasma rifles, the newest in military technology, hummed to life. That's when the first figure stepped through the portal. The being looked human, but wore long robes that shifted colors like oil on water. In its hands, it held a wooden staff topped with a crystal that glowed with inner light. More figures followed, each carrying similar staffs or wearing rings and necklaces that pulsed with strange energies. "This is impossible," James whispered, but his sensors told a different story. The energy readings were off the charts, but they followed patterns, complex but not random. Like a new kind of science they had never seen before. Captain Miller raised his hand, ready to give the order to fire if needed. The tension in the air felt thick enough to cut with a knife. The leading figure raised its staff, and a ball of pure fire appeared above it, hovering in the cold mountain air. The soldiers raised their weapons, plasma cores charging with a high-pitched whine. "Wait," James shouted, stepping forward. Something about the fire wasn't right. It wasn't burning anything, wasn't spreading heat like it should. His sensors showed it was energy, pure and controlled, just like their plasma weapons. The robed figure lowered its staff slightly, head tilting as it studied the humans and their technology. It spoke words that none of them understood, but its tone was clearly curious, not threatening. James made a decision. He walked forward slowly, holding his tablet in front of him like a peace offering. The soldiers tensed, and the robed figures gripped their staffs tighter, but no one acted. When he was halfway between the two groups, James knelt and placed his tablet on the snow. On its screen, he pulled up the energy readings, a universal language of science. The leading figure watched, then moved forward with careful steps. It knelt as well, and with a wave of its hand, created glowing symbols in the air above the tablet. The patterns matched James's readings perfectly. In that moment, watching human technology and impossible magic work in harmony, James understood. This wasn't an invasion or a threat. This was first contact with a civilization that had taken a different path to understanding the universe's deepest secrets. The figure pulled back its hood, revealing a face that looked surprisingly human, with deep eyes that held centuries of wisdom. It smiled and pointed to the tablet, then to its staff, then made a gesture that clearly meant same. And just like that, humanity's understanding of the universe changed forever. The barriers between science and magic, between the possible and impossible, began to crumble. A new age was about to begin. 3 days after the portal opened, James sat in a hastily built meeting room, watching in amazement as Master Thomas, the elderly magic user, turned a cup of water into pure light, and back again. The military had set up a temporary base around the portal site, with prefab buildings forming a ring around the shimmering gateway to another world. Your world, Master Thomas said in newly learned English, his voice heavy with worry. It still has clean magic, pure energy. He gestured at the cup, then at the humming machines that filled the room. Our world, Eldara, is sick. James leaned forward, his scientific curiosity burning. Sick? How can a world be sick? Thomas raised his hand, creating a floating image in the air. It showed a beautiful city with tall crystal towers and floating gardens. Then the image changed, showing the same city darkened, with black veins running through the crystals and gardens withering. The plague, Thomas explained. It corrupts everything it touches. Magic turns dark. Living things grow twisted. He pulled out a crystal from his robe. Unlike the bright ones they had first seen, this one was clouded with swirling darkness. Soon, nothing will be left. James picked up his tablet, scanning the crystal. The readings made his eyes widen. This isn't just magic being corrupted, he said slowly. The energy patterns, they're being reversed, like a mirror image of healthy magic. In the corner of the room, one of the younger magic users, Anna, was watching a physicist run experiments with a plasma rifle. Her eyes lit up every time the blue energy crackled from the weapon. The physicist showed equal wonder when Anna created shields of pure force to catch the plasma bolts. Your plasma, Thomas said, watching them. It's like our magic, but different. Pure energy shaped by science instead of will. He stood up and walked to a window, looking out at the Norwegian mountains. We came seeking help because our legends speak of a world where magic flows differently. We didn't expect to find it flowing through machines. James joined him at the window. On the testing ground outside, soldiers and magic users were learning from each other. A group of scientists had set up sensors around a magic user who was creating various spells, their faces glued to screens showing the energy readings. The plague followed us, Thomas said quietly. We can feel it trying to seep through the portal. Your world's energy, your science, it resists the corruption. But for how long? James felt a chill run down his spine. He looked at his tablet, where a simulation was running. Show me more about how this plague affects your magic, he said. If we can understand it, maybe we can fight it. Thomas nodded and began creating more images in the air. Each one showed how the plague had spread across Eldara, turning vibrant magical energy into twisted darkness. James recorded everything, his mind already working on ways to combine their knowledge. In another corner, Captain Miller sat with a battle mage from Eldara, comparing tactical strategies. The soldier's plasma rifle lay next to the mage's staff, and they were drawing battle plans that combined both worlds' strengths. Time grows short, Thomas said, closing his hands and making the images vanish. The plague spreads faster each day. Soon it will break through to your world. James stood up straighter, determination filling him. Then we better work faster, he said. Your magic and our science, they're different sides of the same coin. The answers we need are in both. Thomas smiled for the first time since arriving. Perhaps this is why the old legends led us here, he said. Not just to save our world, but to bring two kinds of knowledge together. Outside, the portal flickered slightly, its edges darkening for just a moment. The war against the plague was about to begin, and humanity's science would be tested against the darkest magic of another world. The joint research facility grew larger every day. What had started as a few prefab buildings now sprawled across the mountainside, filled with a mix of advanced technology and magical artifacts. Steam rose from vents in the snow, carrying the scent of ozone and something sweeter, the smell of magic in the air. Inside the main lab, James watched as row after row of sensors lit up. Anna, now comfortable with Earth's technology, held her hands over a metal plate connected to a computer. Pure magical energy flowed from her fingers, making the machines hum with power. The energy conversion is holding steady, James said, checking the readings. We're actually doing it. Turning magic into electricity. Beside him, Thomas nodded approvingly. The old master had traded his traditional robes for a lab coat, though he still kept his staff close. And your machines can now detect our magic from miles away. We are learning from each other. The breakthrough had come 3 days ago. A young technician had noticed that magical energy followed patterns similar to electricity, just at a different frequency. Once they understood this, everything changed. They could finally measure magic with scientific tools, and the magic users could sense the flow of electricity like they sensed magical currents. Test number 47, James announced, pressing record on his tablet. First attempt at powering a computer directly with magical energy. Anna closed her eyes, concentrating. The magical energy flowing from her hands changed color, matching the soft blue glow of the computer's normal power supply. On the screen, numbers and letters began appearing. It's working. The young technician, Mike, shouted from his station. The computer is running on pure magic, and it's stable. The room burst into cheers. Magic users and scientists hugged each other, their old divisions forgotten in the excitement of discovery. Even Captain Miller, watching from the doorway, allowed himself a small smile. But their celebration was cut short by an alarm. Red lights flashed as sensors detected another surge from the portal. Everyone rushed to their stations, their movements now practiced and smooth. The darkness is getting stronger, Thomas said, his face grim as he studied the readings. It's learning to adapt to your world's energy. James pulled up the portal monitoring screen. The edges of the gateway were darker than ever, with tiny tendrils of black energy trying to push through. Their sensors showed the corruption was growing stronger, evolving as it tried to break through. Then we need to adapt faster, James said. He turned to the room full of scientists and magic users. Every discovery we make brings us closer to stopping this plague. We can't give up now. In one corner, a group of young magic users sat with physics textbooks open in front of them, learning about quantum mechanics and electromagnetic fields. In another, scientists watched in wonder as Master Thomas demonstrated how magical energy could be shaped and controlled. Look at this, Anna called out. She held up a small device they had built together, a combination of crystal and circuits. When she touched it, both magical and electrical energy flowed through it in perfect harmony. If we can do this with a small device, we can do it on a larger scale, James finished her thought. His mind was already racing with possibilities. We could build defenses that use both types of energy. Thomas walked over to examine the device. In all our history, he said quietly, no one ever thought to combine magic with machines like this. We were too set in our old ways. Outside the lab, more buildings were taking shape. A training ground where soldiers learned to use magically enhanced weapons, classrooms where both worlds shared their knowledge, and workshops where impossible devices were becoming reality. The portal pulsed again, sending another wave of darkness against their sensors. But this time, they were ready. Magic and science working together, growing stronger every day. They had built a bridge between two worlds, and now they would use it to save them both. The first sign that something was wrong came from the city's power grid. Streetlights flickered and died, then came back on glowing with an unnatural purple light. In the research facility's main control room, James watched as reports flooded in from around the world. The plague had found a way through. It's using our power lines to spread, he said, pointing to a map covered in growing dark spots. Just like it used magical ley lines in Eldara. Thomas gripped his staff tighter, its crystal pulsing with warning light. The corruption is stronger here, he said. It's feeding on your world's energy, growing faster than we've ever seen. Alarms blared as another surge hit the facility. The lights dimmed, and computer screens flickered with strange symbols. In the corner, a printer started spewing out pages covered in darkness rather than ink. Everyone, equipment check, James shouted. Scientists rushed to protect their devices, while magic users cast shields around the most important machines. They had prepared for this, but the reality was far worse than their drills. Anna burst into the room, her face pale. "The training ground generators just exploded," she reported. "But they didn't just blow up. They turned into something else. The metal is growing." Through the window, they could see it. The generator building was changing, its walls twisting into spiral patterns that hurt the eyes. Dark energy crackled around it like black lightning. "It's not just copying our world's energy anymore," Thomas said, his voice heavy with realization. "It's learning to combine them, using both magic and technology to spread." James's tablet beeped with an urgent message. The portal monitors were showing similar corruption spreading across every major power grid on Earth. In cities around the world, machines were failing in impossible ways. Cars drove themselves in circles, phones showed images of shadowy creatures, and computers spoke in ancient magical languages. "Sir," Mike called from his station, "look at these readings. The plague. It's not random corruption anymore. There's a pattern to it, like it's becoming intelligent." James rushed to look at Mike's screen. The young technician was right. Hidden in the chaos of readings was a clear signal. The plague was organizing itself, evolving with every system it corrupted. "That's why our defenses aren't working," James said. "We've been treating it like a simple virus, but it's more than that. It's taking what it learns from each world and making itself stronger." Thomas moved to the center of the room and raised his staff. Around him, other magic users did the same, forming a circle. "We must contain it here," he said. "If it reaches the major cities." But it was already too late. The main screen showed news feeds from around the world. In London, black towers had grown out of transformed electrical substations. In Tokyo, trains ran on tracks made of crystallized darkness. In New York, the power grid itself had come alive, sending tendrils of corrupted energy through the streets. "Look at the energy readings," Anna said, pointing to her computer. "The plague is creating new connections between magic and technology. It's doing what we've been trying to do, but twisted and wrong." James stared at the readings, his mind racing. Then he saw it, a tiny detail everyone had missed. "The corruption has rules," he said suddenly. "It can't just change anything it wants. It has to follow the laws of both worlds." "What are you thinking?" Thomas asked, seeing the look in James's eyes. "If it has to follow rules, we can use that against it." James pulled up his research notes. "We've been trying to fight it with magic and science separately. But maybe." He looked at the failed experiments they'd done, seeing them in a new light. Outside, the darkness continued to spread. But for the first time since the plague had broken through, they had a real chance. They just had to understand the enemy better than it understood itself. Lisa Reed hadn't slept in 2 days. The young scientist had been staring at test results until her eyes burned, but it had been worth it. Running into the main lab, she almost crashed into James and Thomas, who were studying a corrupted piece of equipment. "The plasma," she shouted, waving her tablet. "It's not just fighting the plague, it's cleaning it." James grabbed her tablet, his tired eyes coming alive as he looked at the data. On the screen, a simulation showed how a plasma beam had transformed corrupted magical energy back to its natural state. "Of course," Thomas whispered, looking over their shoulders. "Plasma is like pure lightning, nature's way of cleaning the air, and our magic began with the powers of nature." In the corner of the lab, a corrupted computer sparked with dark energy. Lisa walked over to it, holding a small plasma generator they used for tests. She turned it on, and the blue beam struck the darkness. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the blackness began to fade, leaving clean metal behind. "It's not strong enough to clean large areas," Lisa said, "but it proves the theory. Plasma can purify corrupted magic." At that moment, Anna burst into the lab. Her robes were dusty from the archive room, where the magic users kept their oldest books. In her hands, she held an ancient scroll, its edges crumbling. The ancients faced something like this before. she said, carefully unrolling the scroll on a clean table. A darkness that corrupted magic. They called it the Void Plague. James and Thomas crowded around the scroll. Though James couldn't read the magical writing, the drawings were clear. They showed massive circles of power, channels of energy, and something that looked surprisingly like their modern particle accelerators. They built devices to channel pure energy. Thomas translated, his finger tracing the ancient words. But they didn't have your science. The devices burned out their users. Lisa looked at her plasma generator, then at the scroll. "We don't need to burn out anyone," she said. "We can build machines to handle the power, but we'll need something bigger than this little generator." The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. They converted the facility's backup particle accelerator, adding magical crystals to its frame. Magic users carved ancient symbols into its metal surface, while scientists adjusted its plasma flow. The first test failed spectacularly. The machine overloaded, shattering windows across the facility. The second test melted the magical crystals. But with each failure, they learned. The magic and science have to flow together, Anna said after the fifth explosion. Not one then the other, together. James nodded, adjusting equations on his tablet. Like a dance, he said, each supporting the other. On the seventh try, something changed. The machine hummed to life, plasma glowing blue-white in its chambers. Magic flowed through the crystals, merging with the plasma in a perfect spiral. When they tested it on a corrupted sample, the darkness vanished instantly, leaving only clean energy behind. "It works," Lisa whispered. Then louder, "It works." But their celebration was cut short. The facility's alarms blared again, and the main screen showed new alerts. The plague had reached major cities on every continent. Dark towers rose from the ground, connected by webs of corrupted power lines. "Will the machine be enough?" Anna asked, looking at their creation. Though powerful, it was just one device. Thomas studied the ancient scroll again. "The ancients built a network of purifiers," he said. "We need to do the same, but bigger, worldwide." James was already typing on his tablet. "I'm sending the plans to every major research facility on Earth," he said. "If they work fast, we might have enough ready in time." Outside, the sky had grown dark with unnatural storms. They had their weapon against the plague now, but the real battle was just beginning. The sky over New York turned black as another portal ripped open above the city. But this time, Earth was ready. Soldiers carrying plasma rifles modified with magical crystals took up positions around Times Square. Behind them, magic users from Eldora raised their staffs, their robes fluttering in the energy-charged wind. "Portal stabilizing in Sector 7. A voice crackled over the radio. "All units, prepare to engage." From the darkness came twisted shapes, creatures of pure corruption that had once been normal animals in Eldora. They moved like living shadows, leaving trails of darkness that ate into the concrete. "Fire!" The order rang out across the city. Blue-white plasma bolts, now streaked with magical energy, lit up the night. Where they struck the shadow creatures, the darkness burned away, leaving nothing behind. The magic users followed each shot with bursts of pure power, cleaning away the corrupt trails. Similar battles raged in cities across the world. In Tokyo, scientists had mounted purifier devices on their bullet trains, creating moving walls of cleansing energy. London's underground system pumped plasma through magical channels, forming a shield around the city's heart. Back in Norway, James and Thomas stood in the command center, directing the global defense. The main screen showed dozens of battles happening at once. Humanity and Eldora's people fighting side by side, their powers perfectly matched. "The purifier network is at 80%. Lisa called out from her station. Around the world, hundreds of cleaned particle accelerators were running at full power, pumping pure energy into the ground and air. But the plague fought back. In Paris, a dark tower suddenly grew from a corrupted power station, reaching into the clouds. Similar towers rose in other cities, each one a spear of solid darkness stabbing at the sky. "It's trying to connect the portals," Thomas said, watching the pattern emerge. "If those towers link up, they'll cover the whole planet in darkness," James finished. He grabbed his radio. "All units, the towers are the key. Concentrate your fire on the towers." Anna led a team of mixed soldiers and magic users up the side of the Paris Tower. Their plasma rifles cleared a path while magical shields protected them from the tower's dark energy. Other teams around the world did the same, fighting their way up through storms of shadow. In New York, the tower started to pulse with terrible power. The streets below cracked as dark energy poured out. But then a squad of soldiers arrived in helicopters, their weapons modified with the strongest magical crystals yet. "Remember your training," the squad leader shouted. "Magic users, channel your power through the rifles. Scientists, keep the plasma flow steady. Fire together." The combined blast of science and magic struck the tower's peak. For a moment, nothing happened. Then cracks of pure light spread down its surface. The tower shuddered, trying to repair itself, but more blasts followed. Around the world, other teams hit their targets at the same time. In the command center, the sensors showed everything. "The towers are failing," Mike shouted. "The connection is breaking." James watched as the towers began to crumble, their dark energy dissipating in the face of combined plasma and magic. The portals above the cities started to shrink, their edges burning away. "The purifier network is working," Lisa said, her voice filled with hope. "The plague is losing its hold. It can't maintain its forms without the towers." Thomas raised his staff, its crystal glowing brighter than ever. "Now," he said, "while it's weak, everyone, channel your power through the network." One final push. Around the world, every soldier, scientist, and magic user acted together. Plasma rifles fired, magical staffs blazed, and purifier machines hummed at maximum power. The darkness tried to fight back, but it couldn't stand against the combined might of two worlds fighting as one. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, they were winning. 1 month after the final battle, James stood at the window of the newly built Global Science and Magic Academy. The Norwegian mountains still wore their coat of snow, but now crystal spires rose alongside modern buildings, their shapes blending the best of both worlds. Inside the main hall, students from Earth and Eldara sat together, learning about plasma physics and magical energy flows in the same classroom. A young soldier practiced with a training staff while nearby. A magic user learned to maintain a plasma rifle. "Strange to think it all started right here," Thomas said, walking up beside him. The old master looked different now, healthier, younger somehow. The defeat of the plague had lifted a great weight from his shoulders. "The plague forced our worlds together," James replied. "But what we built here is something entirely new." Through another window, they could see Lisa teaching a class on energy conversion. Her students used tablets to measure magical output while casting simple spells. On their screens, graphs showed the perfect harmony between scientific readings and magical forces. "The purifier network is complete," Anna announced, walking into the room with a tablet displaying a global map. Green dots covered every continent, showing the combined plasma magic generators that now protected both worlds. Earth's power grid is fully integrated with Eldara's ley lines. In cities around the world, the scars of battle were healing. The dark towers had crumbled to dust, replaced by new buildings that channeled clean energy. Streets glowed softly at night, lit by a combination of electricity and magical light. "The latest reports from Eldara are good," Thomas said, smiling. "The corrupted areas are recovering. Life is returning to places we thought were lost forever." Mike burst into the room, his face excited. "The first commercial portal generator just passed its final test," he announced. "Regular travel between worlds will begin next month." James nodded, remembering how far they'd come. What had started as an energy anomaly on his sensors had turned into humanity's greatest advancement. The portal that had first opened in fear now symbolized hope and cooperation. In the training yard below, Captain Miller watched as his soldiers trained alongside Eldora's warriors. Their weapons and techniques had evolved, becoming something neither world had seen before. Even the military had learned that the best defense came from understanding both sides of power. The universities want to add more combined courses, Anna said, checking her messages. Everyone wants to learn both sciences now. They're calling it technological magic, or magical technology, Lisa added, joining them after her class. Depends which world you're from, she laughed, and the others joined in. The old divisions seemed foolish now. Thomas walked to a shelf and picked up a small device, the first successful fusion of magic and technology they had built. We thought we were so different, he said softly. But in the end, we were studying the same powers, just from different directions. Outside, a test portal sparkled into life, its edges clean and stable. Unlike the dark portals of the plague, this one glowed with healthy energy. A group of students walked through, carrying books and tablets, chatting about their studies in both worlds. The plague taught us something important, James said, watching the students. We're stronger together than apart. Every discovery in one field helps us understand the other better. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in colors that seemed more vibrant since the plague's defeat. The crystal spires caught the light, sending rainbows dancing across the snow. In the distance, a passenger plane flew past a floating transport platform, neither seeming out of place anymore. So Lisa asked, "What do we discover next?" James looked at his old friends, scientist and wizard, soldier and sage, all working together. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities that neither world had dreamed of before. Everything, he answered. We discover everything. And in the gathering dusk, as lights both electrical and magical began to shine, two worlds continued to grow together, reaching for a future that was brighter than either could have achieved alone.